Good morning and welcome to another inspiring episode of the Good Morning Minute, where we start our day with purpose, passion, and a little bit of power. I'm your host, Angelina Mojica, and today's conversation is part of our special series in partnership with Empower Her Steps virtual conference, a movement rooted in helping women rise, heal, and walk boldly into the life God has designed for them. Our mission is simple but powerful, empowering life purpose. Because we believe that when a woman finds clarity in her calling, everything changes for her family, her community, and the generations to come. So friends, grab your coffee, take a deep breath, and get ready to be uplifted as we dive into real stories, honest lessons, and bold steps towards purpose with today's incredible guest. And that guest is Michelle. Michelle, thank you so much for coming on to the Good Morning Minute podcast.
Hello. Well, thank you so much for inviting me. I am so happy to be here. And this is such a beautiful thing that you are doing. And I'm glad to be a part of it.
Thank you. Well, Michelle, I know that I got to know you a little bit behind the scenes, but our listeners don't know you. So go ahead and take this time to introduce yourself.
Absolutely. So my name is Michelle Haughton. I am the owner and founder of Life After Loss Academy. And this has been literally, I say all the time that this healing journey and me creating what I do with my clients started with me. I needed to figure things out for myself. And through that, I created amazing programs. I help my clients. I focus on trauma healing. I'm a mother. I think I said I was a wife. So I do all of this and try to inspire my family to do the same as well. So we're healing generational curses of trauma, and we're starting some new things as well.
Wow, what a beautiful calling and purpose that you have taken upon yourself. Um, Before we get started, let's just start with a little icebreaker. If today had a theme song for you, what would it be?
Oh, today I had a theme song. I would say Go Crazy by Chris Brown. I'm a huge Chris Brown fan. So whenever that song comes on, it just reminds me to just have fun, be in the moment. And whenever I hear it, it really does bring me to that place again. So that would be my song, my theme.
Wow, awesome. Okay. Well, let's jump into the heart of our conversation today, and that is pain to purpose. So, what was the defining moment of pain or challenge in your life, and how did it impact you?
My story is quite interesting. I had a lot of painful experiences in my life from a
Mhm.
very, very early age. My father was killed in a domestic violence situation before I was 1 years old. So that pain was a structure. So I had to figure out how to live life, not automatically looking at everything that I went through from that perspective. It was a running joke in my family. I don't know if you're aware, like a long time ago, The Simpsons had an album, and Lisa Simpson had a song that was Born Under a Bad Sign. And my family would always joke, like, oh, that's Michelle's song. That represents her. Because if it wasn't for
Wow.
bad luck, she wouldn't have any luck at all. And I really felt that. I had a lot of harsh experiences growing up. I was molested as a child. My parents were alcoholics, and there was a lot of toxicity. So that is really what I used as my identity. And so for me, when I decided that I wanted something different was when I became a mom.
Mhm.
And I started seeing some of those patterns and behaviors that I was so afraid of from my mom and my dad starting to show up in my own behaviors. And then I could see my children responding to me the way that I responded to my mom. And that is what made me decide. I was crying in my closet and I was just crying out to God. And I was telling God, I've gone through so much in my life. I was in the military. I had some real harsh experiences in the military. And as I was crying, I was like, God, how did I get through all of this? And I'm still just in so much pain. And God said, yeah. And I was so confused by that response. And I was like, I was hoping for more, but it was just a yes. And I knew in that moment, after I reflected on it, it was, you did get through that. So that is why I created my company's called Life After Loss, is because
Mhm.
I went through all of this loss, and now I want to plug into what does life feel like? What does healing look like? What does happiness and joy? What does that feel like? So
Mhm.
I decided that I didn't want to continue to have generational trauma, that I wanted to have generational healing. And so I just started studying. I started learning as much as I could learn, because in my family, when I talk about mental health, when I talk about, spirituality and connecting to oneself, that's very taboo, especially in the African American communities. Talking to therapists and things of that nature is like, what happens in your home stays in your home. But
Mhm.
I didn't want to do that anymore because it was
Yeah.
not resonating with me. I needed to just figure this out. And I went to therapists. It wasn't a great experience, but I loved really working in the community. I've always been that person to be that mentor, to be that inspiration, and to just really cheer on people. I love doing that. And so one day I was wanting to get something different for myself. And I was looking at life coaches, and I was looking at the descriptions of what they do. And I went to my oldest son and I said, "Do you think I can do this?" And he looked at me and goes, "Mom, you've been doing that." Like, what are you talking about? This is what you do all the time. So I was
Yeah.
like, wow, I can do this for a living. And then that's just what I do. I really enjoy showing amazing women that we don't have to be in pain. We don't have to suffer. And we can really learn how to process and heal from experiences that we thought we never could ever even heal from.
I love that. And I want to go back to something that you said in the beginning where you were like, I started to see what my mom was doing as a parent, and me experiencing that as a child. I started to see that in my own parenting with my own children. That is huge because we may, as children, experience something and go, man, I never want to be like that with my kids. I never want to be like that with my kids. But if we don't make the change, then we're focused so much on not becoming our parents, for the bad habits or whatever, that we bring it into our lives unconsciously. Like we start doing it. And I too, I mean, I'm guilty. I've had those moments where I'm like, dang, I'm just like my mom. And
Mhm.
it's almost an awakening. When you catch it and you become aware, then you can change it. So it's important for those that are young enough to hear, like, if you truly want to change the trajectory of your life and not repeat those familial patterns, then you need to start today. You need to address those issues today so that it doesn't repeat. And you're talking about healing generational curses and cycles and those things. You have to start today. And I love that we're doing this because I'm hoping that the young listeners, I work with young teens and stuff, and I'm like, I want to be that person I needed when I was their age,
Mhm.
so that they don't have to go 20, 30 years and then figure it out the hard way. I really tried to do that for my own children and for the children that I work with. So I love that you said that. um, so what was it that helped you heal and grow through this season?
I would have to say my children. I like I said, I didn't have a lot of the family support from like my mom. My family's really really small, and I don't really speak with my siblings. So it was the encouragement from my kids,
Mhm.
my husband, the gentleness, because there was a lot of reframing, retraining, a lot of behaviors that I had to change within myself. And especially when you're healing and you're going through
Mhm.
different experiences in your life where you're doing the reflective work, that has a moment where you do go through, I call it the grieving process. So you might have
Mhm.
some bouts of anger and depression, especially when you're working through some of the harsh stuff in your life. And my kids have been so super supportive. We They allow me to have those conversations because my children are older. My oldest son is 22, my middle son is 16, and my youngest is 13. So it's been a journey, but a pleasure because I get those encouraging words.
Mhm.
And in fact, the way that they kind of poke at me is they're like, "Oh, we don't want 2008 mom to come back," because that was when I was really angry. So they have these
Yeah.
periods of time that they can really reflect back to me like, Mom, look at this growth. And then the relationship that we have is something that I wish I would have had with my own mom growing up, but at least I get to have it with my kids. So it's really the family has been what has uplifted me and kept me going.
Hmm, I love that. And it's so true. Like I know that just going through my own development journey and as I was building, my coaching business and just learning and doing the trauma work and becoming trauma informed so that I could practice that in my day-to-day job, I would share with my kids what I'm learning and, teach them. And they would too, just like your children, come back and go, oh, okay, this, whatever training it was, whether it was TBRI or Circle of Security or something like that, they'd be like, oh, TBRI. And it's like, yeah, yeah. But they're also learning with me. And I think that's
Mhm.
a great opportunity to build relationship, but also too for everybody to hold each other accountable and be able to say, you know what, we're not perfect, but we're all growing, we're all healing, we're all, moving in the same direction and, whatever it is. And to recognize you aren't where you started.
Right.
That's the big thing, I think. Um, okay, so during this time of transition and building purpose, when did you begin to sense that there was purpose on the other side of this pain journey for yourself?
I've always knew that I had a purpose in this lifetime.
Mhm.
Um, for me, I started off being in theater on stage, and that's what
Mhm.
I thought my purpose was. I was supposed to be this star. And even though it didn't work out in that essence, I still knew that I had a purpose, I had a reason. And I allowed myself to just be open and follow what God has called me to do and just know that if God's leading me in that direction, then I know that that's where I need to go. So the purpose has always been there. It was how I was going to show up. And I've always worked in the community. I started doing volunteer work when I was in third grade. So it just makes sense. What was different was I never talked about my story.
Mhm.
And I'm so happy that I was open to the purpose because once I started sharing about my story, once I started breaking the norms of what stays in this house is kept in this house, then I started even hearing from my own family members, how it has encouraged them even in the moments of fear to be able to talk about it. And I love that that is where my purpose had led me to just
Mhm.
share my story, something that was so difficult for me, and see that other people are inspired by it and they're doing it as well, because that is where we need to start, is if we give ourselves our voice and we start validating what we went through and not be fearful of hurting someone else's feelings. I think we fall into that, especially with childhood traumas.
Mhm.
We want to respect our parents, but then deny ourselves that authentic way of saying this really hurt me. And I'm so glad that that is where my purpose is now being led. Is just sharing, and it's crazy when you look at from pain to purpose. Is oftentimes your purpose is wrapped in your pain. That's why you kind of say you're the sixth stage of grief is purpose,
Mhm.
and you find your purpose through pain. So it's definitely a full circle moment.
I love that, and you're right. And it's sometimes during the time of pain, during that challenging season in your life, you don't really see it
Mhm.
until, like the Lord said to you, yes, until you have come on to the other side, and then as you look back, you can sit there and go, oh, okay, that makes sense, and then you can help others. And I like that you mentioned our voice being, enabling our voice to speak our story, because there's a freedom when we can
Absolutely.
be honest with ourselves and others and saying, you know what, I'm not a perfect person and this is what's happened to me, or, this is what I've done. But to actually own it and then just start being responsible for where you are at in life. Like that was my lesson, but there's a freedom in it because
Mhm.
the shackles of shame and guilt just fall off. And you can say, yeah, you know what? I did that. I've been divorced. You know what? I had a domestically violent relationship, whatever your story is, and be okay with it because people are always going to say the things that they want to say, whether that's in judgment or, whatever. But when you were free, and God says the truth will set you free. When you are free in spirit and you're living in your purpose and your calling, none of that affects you. None of it does. It's what our story does to us, the time that we're in those adversities that try to break our voice and silence us. And so when you can come out of it, you're empowered and you're able to help others. I love that you said that, Michelle. I really do. I feel it. I feel it. Um, so here you are, you're in transition and you're doing things and you're, coming up with inspiration and ideas to help others. How has your story shaped who you are today?
It shaped every aspect of who I am. Um, because to be really honest, I remember my first therapy session
Mm,
and we were going through because I've never been the type of person that felt that I could honestly share everything because there's so many things that happened in my life that's very triggering. And
mhm,
so I am very mindful and aware of that. And I remember I shared a little bit and the therapist looked at me and was shocked because I never tried to commit suicide.
mhm,
And he said, "And you never tried to kill yourself?" And I was taken back by that. And I said, "Well, why would you say that?" And when I walked out of that room, I was sad and mad at the same time
mhm,
because
mhm,
I said, if I wasn't this type of headstrong person that I am, that statement would have been so detrimental to me. And
mm,
that was something that stuck with me. And
mhm.
so that has been my powerhouse in what I'm doing. So I kind of said that to say, what was the question again? I'm so sorry.
No, 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 you're good. You're good. It just, how has it shaped who you are today?
Yes. So when I heard that, it made me realize that yes, my story was hard,
Mhm,
but we all have a story.
mhm,
And it shaped me because then when I walked out of that door, I created it. I created a healing journey for others to hear my story, but not in the way where, like, Michelle, I'm surprised you didn't do that. No, we all have moments and we all deserve to find that peace and happiness.
mhm,
And I wouldn't change anything that I went through, even though it was really hard, because it allows me to be this person that I am today.
mhm,
And I'm happy and I'm very thankful for the challenge because it allows me also to sit with my clients, even though we might not have gone through the same situation.
mhm,
I can relate, and I think that's really important because there were so many times where I was sitting on the other end, whether it was a coach, whether it was a therapist, and I didn't feel like they could connect and they related to my
mhm,
story and I felt like an outsider. And that is something that I am able to give my clients because I have gone through so many different struggles that I
mhm,
can relate to that person. We might not have gone through it the same exact way, but I can connect. And that has that is the reason why I'm just like I'm glad I went through it because it shaped exactly who I am.
mm. And I love that you're sharing that because it does bring it opens up your capacity to be empathetic and not just sympathetic because sympathetic is, somebody's going through something, sorry for you. It's
Mhm.
almost feeling less and it like, oh,
Mhm.
glad it's you, not me. That's kind of how I interpret sympathy. But when you're empathetic, you're actually able to be like join a person where they are and be there in the moment and feel it with them. And then you're able to like, okay, let's walk through this mess right now. Let's see, see what it is. And I think that's what I like coaching too, because it's really looking at more of a solution, like looking more towards goals and not necessarily focusing on the therapy aspect, although that can be part of the coaching, but not looking at just the therapy and constantly like, well, tell me how this made you feel and tell me this
Mhm.
and tell me that, but coming out of it, okay, I get that it was hard. I get that you felt this way, but what do you want to do with it? Like what do you want to do with that? What do you want it to say about you? You know, I appreciate you just being honest in that and saying that. So let's say somebody is out there and they're kind of like, you know what, I'm at that rock bottom. I'm at that moment where I don't know what the next step is. What kind of advice would you give that person?
Well, the first thing, when someone says I'm at rock bottom, you
Mhm.
know, I think that's a great place to be because then you can kind of get some clarity and start talking to yourself. And one of the things that I say is when you're at that rock bottom, um, allow yourself to be curious. When we go through hardships, we're sometimes so judgmental and hard on ourselves to where it doesn't help. It just makes the situation worse. But be curious and allow yourself to just ask yourself questions, reflective questions, and speak with someone like myself or yourself who's a coach. Can that reframing and getting a different perspective of a situation is so helpful. I have spoken to so many clients where this internal guilt was what was causing their rock bottom to be worse. So
Mhm.
having that ability and being and talking to someone that will allow you to see things from a different perspective is so healing because then you're able to start being curious and doing that work. So that would be my first thing, is to really find someone you can trust and get a different perspective. Get a journal. If you don't have
Mhm.
someone that you can speak to, get a journal and start writing it out because that is so therapeutic in itself. Even if it's something that is difficult for you to do at first, and your sentences might be just like one or two sentences, but give yourself that
Mhm.
space. My number one thing I was very known for, I would be crying in my prayer closet. I closed that door and I would just allow myself to cry it out, let my frustrations go. If I was angry about a situation, I allowed myself to just cry it out. And then music, whatever those vices that you need to help you cope that are healthy, connect to it because then you can allow yourself to just kind of ask reflective questions and love on
Mhm.
yourself in those moments. But that's what I would definitely suggest if someone felt like they're in their rock bottom moment.
Mhm. Good advice for sure. Um, so Michelle, what does living on purpose look like for you today?
Living on purpose, what it looks like is really focusing, growing my business, growing the brand, doing things that I enjoy doing, but most importantly, pushing myself to work outside of my comfort zone. I
Mhm.
think as we continue to grow and we continue to heal, that fear is something that I am working so that's my awareness is okay, I'm fearful of this. Let me see what this fear is and let's continue to walk through it because there's a lot of healing and self reflection in that. So that is me living on purpose right now is doing things that I um, wouldn't necessarily do, but enjoy doing it while I'm doing it.
That's beautiful. How rewarding is it to step out of your comfort zone and go, wow, I actually did something that I never thought I could do. And it was
Mhm.
because fear can be a good thing, it can be a bad thing, just depending on your perspective of fear. Fear can hold you back, or you can be fearful of the unknown, take the leap of faith, and then accomplish something magnificent. But you know what I'm saying? Fear can be that indicator of, whatever you define it to be. It could be a barrier or it could be a gate opening for sure, an opportunity opening. I mean, we're always going to have some type of fear, anxiety, or something within ourselves, but it really is just exciting energy that we just need to
Mhm.
push forward so that we can do the things that we want to do and we want to create and stuff like that. So I love that. I do love that. Michelle, as we start getting kind of towards the end of our conversation here, I'm going to ask you a question of legacy and impact. If today were your last day, what would you want to be remembered for?
Oh, I actually think about this a lot. For me, I want to be remembered for just showing up.
Mm.
And I want to be remembered for the color purple. That's my favorite color. So
Mm.
when my name is referenced, it has to be, you have to remember that I love the color purple. But just really being that dependable person that always showed up.
Wonderful, wonderful. I love the color purple. That's one of my favorite colors as well. And it signifies so much for me too. So I love that, we could share that color in favor. Um, if someone were listening out there and they needed maybe some encouraging words or maybe some truth spoken over them, what would that be for you if they're struggling to find their life purpose? What kind of truth or encouragement would you give that person?
I have a tag that I use for everything, and that's you got to love yourself through discovery and healing. And I coined that tag for myself because
Mhm.
when I started this journey, there was so many truths that I just didn't want to hear, that I just couldn't process. And because of that, those negative coping mechanisms really kicked in. Like the drinking was harder, and because I just
Mhm.
didn't want to connect to these hard truths. And it wasn't until I was just like, you need to love yourself, because you're going to learn so much about yourself during this
Mhm.
time of healing and reflecting. You're going to learn a lot about other people that you might not wanted to learn, or it might be hard to process. And then environmentally, things are going to look different.
Mhm.
But love yourself through that discovery and through your healing process, because the journey is so worth it. It is
Mhm.
so worth it.
I love that. And that's such good words for someone out there listening that just needs to hear that. Well, Michelle, if someone's listening to you and they're like, you know what, I want to get in connection with Michelle. She's got some really good advice, some good encouragement. I want to learn more. How can they do so?
Absolutely. Thanks for this question. So you can go to my website. It's lifeafterlossacademyllc.com. And then my social medias are my name, Michelle Haughton. And I post videos. I have a YouTube. And in my links in my bios are all the ways that you can work with me at Life After Loss Academy. We offer a couple of programs. I have my course, Healing to Create Abundance, and that focuses on our three pillars of understanding our cognitive behavioral thoughts, where our thoughts are generated. We talk about the vagus nerve reset, and then also understanding how we grieve. We grieve so many things in our life, and I really challenge my clients to look at grief from not only the perspective of a physical loss of someone transitioning, but we lose so many things in our life that we grieve. And I've realized a lot of people don't even realize that that's what they're doing, is they're grieving certain situations in their life. So that's what we focus on the Healing to Create Abundance. And I offer that in a self-led course. So that one you can purchase on your own. There's videos and a workbook. So in case you don't want to work with me and you don't want to do the intensive, that's an option that I give my clients. And then I have my 12-week interactive, more intensive course. That one is offered in a hybrid model. So I do have a location in the state of Washington. So we do a hybrid. So we do it internally and also online, or we can do that one-on-one as well. So you can find all of those links in my bios and also on my website.
Absolutely. And then for those that didn't catch that information, I will have it posted alongside the description to this podcast so that you can get in touch with Michelle, who has great advice and encouragement for us to learn from. So thank you again, Michelle, for sharing your heart, your story, and your light with us today. Conversations like this remind us that purpose is not about perfection. It's about showing up and growing through the things that we go through and trusting that every step matters. Here at the Good Morning Minute and through the Empower Her Steps movement, we believe every woman has a calling worth discovering and a voice worth using. So wherever you are today, friend, remember, you have purpose and it is powerful, and you are not walking alone. Until next time, keep rising, keep trusting, and keep walking boldly in the life that God has designed for you. I'm Angelina Mojica, your life coach, sending you much love, much peace, many blessings.